Yeah, I know this is very late to the holiday party. My bad, guys. Things just got away from me at the end of last year before I had to leave for my family Christmas in another city for a couple days. I did manage to live stream on my last upload date though, so I hope you guys enjoyed the real-time behind the scenes I hosted while I worked on one of my latest commissions. It's there on my channel ready for you guys to enjoy if you're interested. And funnily enough, I've actually finished that commission recently. You might have seen it on my social media. But enough about that. I wanted to make the effort to create a Christmas special for 2019 as I didn't for my first year of content, so I juggled around a couple concepts for video ideas and put the poll out on my social media to see what you would want me to tackle. The options were turning my favorite Christmas desserts into sweet girls. This was kind of inspired by Lavender Town's series of turning different things into girls videos. I thought this might be a fun challenge, especially given my favorite desserts are strawberry tarts and trifle. That video option actually won the Instagram poll. Next was a #Trixks remix Christmas OCs edition. Given I only ran the poll into the first week of December, I didn't really give myself much time to put the call out for your OCs and to choose one, but while it came last on Instagram, it tied for first on Twitter with the last option, the naughty and nice character swap. The idea was I would sabotage the official naughty and nice list to make a bad character appear good and a good character appear bad, like a hero-villain swap. Given that there wasn't a clear winner when I compared my Twitter and Instagram polls, I decided to get my Discord troops to cast the deciding votes. It tied again for a little bit there before the naughty and nice list pulled ahead as a clear winner in the end. That decided, I juggled around a few different fictional characters I could see getting their morality swapped. Sorry, but Disney characters were waving their arms at me more than anything else. Some characters I thought of, like Batman and Joker, just sat in the visual moral grey area too much. Batman can look like a villain so easily even though he's a hero, and a good Joker is basically a normal looking clown. So yeah, that didn't offer a compelling tale or challenge for me at all. Browsing through the list of Disney villains in my brain, a couple that stood out to me were Ursula and Cruella De Vil. Ursula actually had a canon brother and sister dynamic with Triton that was ultimately abandoned in the movie, but still used in the musical and the Poor Unfortunate Soul book. While she was a dabbler in dark magic in the musical that caused her banishment, in the book she was betrayed by Triton because she chose her octopus form instead of the standard mermaid one. Seems a bit shallow to me if that was the only reason, so I potentially could have done something with that backstory in mind. But ideas for Cruella De Vil started to overthrow the competition, plus it would give me an excuse to draw some fur babies, even if they were meant to be the naughty to Cruella's nice in this artwork. Given how this challenge is an opposite one at its core, I started to brainstorm what would be the key visual identifiers I would need to change in Cruella's design. Looking back at her Disney classic look, she's as skinny as a stick, has cheekbones that could carve a turkey, and typically wears a huge expensive looking coat. Overall, she comes across as a high-class woman with a lot of power and money. Using these aspects as the base, I could see her nice counterpart being a bit more fat and curvy, her face more rounded out and youthful. And then in taking away her power and money, I could see her being a homeless young girl, so her nice and flashy clothes would be old, torn and dirty instead. Running with the homeless idea as the core of her alter ego, I thought of what she wouldn't really have access to on the streets. She wouldn't have a proper means to cut her hair, so it would be long and ratty, and what she could manage to cut would be uneven and only done in necessities, so she'd probably have bangs to keep the hair out of her eyes. To keep a similar close silhouette to original design, I initially experimented with the idea of her little black dress being replaced with a long-sleeve turtleneck, coupled with a scarf. Then another idea I had leaned back towards her signature white mink coat, where I thought about dressing her in a more basic, torn and muddied coat with a faux fur collar, cuffs and hem. I looked up some apocalyptic concept art for ideas to help me figure out ways to make the coat appear more run down than your average off-the-rack coat, and thought a few torn shoulders, exposed lining and fraying material would be a great set of additional effects to her final outfit. The hood was an idea for a moment, but I decided that while that would have emphasized her shyness and willingness to keep her head down and out of trouble, it deviated from the iconic Cruella look too much. Not to mention, it would have covered too much of her iconic hair. Ultimately, I decided the high collar of faux fur worked best. Moving further down her design, I drew a piece of rope to really emphasize the rough, barely kept together nature of her outfit. The black dress was replaced with a basic black shirt and torn faded jeans instead to better suit her life on the streets. Something to keep her warmer in the winter months perhaps, but no shoes. Not sure how realistic that would be. If she had been homeless long enough, you'd think she would have managed to get some form of footwear, but I liked how it made her appear even more vulnerable, which was an important concept I wanted to push. Using my trusty DesignDoll posing program, I had a rough picture in my head going forward. Given her new homeless and nice status, I was going to be establishing the Dalmatians, or just dogs in general in this case, as the new naughty. Territorial stray dogs came to mind. I imagined that she has to live with the worst luck in the world when it comes to her interactions with canines. Any dogs that came across her would sense her submissive nature and would attack if she happened to stray into their perceived territory or had food on her. With that in mind, I thought a good backstory for the worsened condition of her coat would be from a history of dog attacks. It was thick enough to shield her from any warning bites or scratches, but after every attack she leaves with more tears ripped into the material. As I thought more about it, I could see all of this being an alternative origin story for Cruella De Vil. We know her as the mad woman with a fetish for real animal coats and no empathy for animals. But what if she started her life humbled on the streets, where all she knew to expect of dogs was aggression? What if, when she finally made it off the streets and made a name for herself, she never forgave or learned to trust the canine species and relished in the opportunity to wear clothes that fulfilled her sadistic sense of revenge? Yeah, she's still twisted. Just not at this current stage of her story. Yikes, this got a whole lot deeper than I intended when I first thought up this naughty and nice list swap idea. Anyway, the key features I wanted to include in the illustration was an abandoned urban street or back alley environment. Perhaps some place she was hoping to sleep for the night. Then Cruella surrounded by dogs, not just one but almost like a pack, to help emphasize her sense of vulnerability and make the dogs the clear aggressors. Then there would be her obvious terror in the situation she finds herself in. Dropped to the ground, herded into a corner or up against a wall, she couldn't do anything but cower and keep her arms close to her face and upper body to try and protect herself as best she could. Composition and layout wise, I wanted to make sure Cruella was the strongest element in the illustration. She's the clear focus of your eye, and she was viewed and posed on an angle that would show off as much of her new character design as possible while still telling the story of terror and leaving space for her attackers. So the camera angle I used in the composition was a bit more ambitious in comparison to something I might have done in the past, so I made sure I had my sense of perspective drawn down to help me keep the scene grounded and to figure out the different views of the dog's forms. I ended up placing Cruella against an alley wall and pinned her down with 3 different dogs honing in on her. To heighten the sense of the danger, I made sure at least one of the dogs was physically interacting with her, and thought this was a good point to link back to the idea that it's the dogs wearing down her clothes, so I had it tug on the hem of her coat. Kinda like a police dog would cling onto a test sleeve and tug the person down so they're stopped on the ground and vulnerable. When I got further into Cruella's sketch, in the situation she was in, the hair length really wasn't doing it for me. Pressed up against a wall, it couldn't really be seen, and it just ended up looking too cliche anime schoolgirl for my liking. So I ended up drawing a variant of her original short hair in the form of a messy bob haircut, keeping the bangs I originally planned for her hair with a few uneven wisps to add a rough texture. Once she was finished, I settled down to start building up the dogs. I didn't really have any particular breeds in mind at the sketching stage, but given the swap, I knew at least one of them had to be a Dalmatian. I think this might have been my first time in a long time that I've drawn a dog with a proper snarl. This piece really challenged me from the get-go. A full-body human, an outfit, and a high angle with animals of varying placements that required me to draw them from perspectives I typically wouldn't. Can't emphasize enough how important it is to use references when you're drawing something you're struggling or unfamiliar with, people. I have to admit that my affinity for my rendered line art style has developed a lot in recent months. It's become my go-to style, and I've loved how each piece has turned out. I do feel a little differently when it comes to my animal-focused artworks though. Like my Gurgi piece I made late last year here on the channel. I find when it comes to drawing something that is so predominantly fluffy or simple, I find that the digital painting process feels a lot more natural in comparison to how I handle humans, like how my avatar turned out. I brought a couple things I learned in the first part of my art styles challenge into this piece as well, like how I applied the line art. Relying less on the more intense smoothing settings of my lazy Nezumi Pro plugin, and I tended to juggle between the amount of smoothing in Photoshop's brush tool itself and using the pen tool for the longer continuous lines. Gosh. I remember the days when I used to line an entire artwork with the pen tool alone. We're talking early 2000s here, but I never drew final line work with the brush tool because I didn't like how unsteady the lines turned out back then. I could sketch and color no problem, but ask me to draw the finalized artwork? No way in hell I was doing it with the brush. I felt the extra time I would spend using the pen tool was worth the better result at the end. We all start somewhere, and I must say I am definitely feeling more and more confident with the process. I'm a tad more tolerant of slightly wavy lines in my most recent works, as I've come to accept that it does look more natural. And hey, it's a lot easier to handle if you don't stress yourself worrying about a slight variation in line weight or a straight line that isn't ruler straight. Man, this video is helping me reminisce a lot, but I suppose it's appropriate given this was meant to be an end of year piece. I look back at my work from 2019 from before New Year's, and it felt so good to see all I had achieved and how my skill and style had developed. I hope you guys are looking forward to the work I'll create for 2020 like I am. I'll be joining more zines, taking on more commissions, creating more content for YouTube and my Patreon, so I'll be kept pretty busy, that's for sure. I have a couple things to finish up on from last year, Inktober, but I don't plan to abandon any of my unfinished projects. That would nag at the back of my mind too much. Sorry, now back to the artwork at hand. I kept Cruella's colouring pretty true to the original Disney palette. I don't think they ever zoomed in enough in the movie, but in some of her modern Disney character art, I was surprised to see she had green eyes similar to the colour of her movie jewellery. Which makes sense to me. It can be an effective technique to link small applications of colour by using the same colour or hue. I painted the dog that I had tugging on her coat as the only Dalmatian. The one in the background I kind of made to look like a basic beige mutt. It could have a bit of pit bull in it, but otherwise I just had to make the last dog in the foreground a German Shepherd. I love the colours in its coat. They're gorgeous dogs. So I'm sorry I made this one a bit of a douche. Moving through to the rendering stage of shadow and lighting, I experimented a little with initial layers. I first added a subtle purtle vignette to the piece to help focus the eye on Cruella as the brightest part of the image. I imagined the piece to be set during the night with a bright moon overhead streaming into the alley with no streetlight influence. So I thought I could play with the colour of the shadow and light. Not quite sure what made me go with purple for my main shadow colour, but hey, who am I to question why 2019 me was suddenly invested in the dark purple hue? Given the colder setting I was imagining Cruella to be in, hence the coat by the way, the colder tones seemed more appropriate to use for the rendering, especially the blue light I picked. Might I just say the blue light looks stunning in her hair. It typically always makes black look so rich and gorgeous in my eyes. You see someone with black hair walk by and suddenly it's hit by the sunlight and you see the dark rich blue shine instead. It just looks so pretty. If black hair would have suited me, I would have dyed my hair that color a few years ago. But my hairstylist convinced me to compromise with a deep violet color instead. The blue light also just added a pretty cool tonal shift in certain areas of the characters. Like in Cruella's faux fur lining. The mixtures of browns, creams, and blues was so different and pretty, it does remind me that I should experiment more with hue shifts in fur. It can look so interesting, but still natural at the same time, which messes with my mind a bit. Then I just had to have the spotlight of focused lighting streaming down onto Cruella from the top corner. I just couldn't help myself. When you like a certain effect, sometimes you just can't help the urge to use it more than once. Or twice. Or 3 times. Then with an added flush of red spread over her face like she's about to cry in response to the situation she finds herself in, my late Christmas 2019 piece was finished. New goal for 2020? Get a Christmas special out on time at the end of the year. Or just try to make more holiday special videos in general. If you guys have any ideas for videos you'd like for holidays this year, leave them in the comments below. It can be for Halloween, for Christmas, or well, that's all I can think of at the moment, but I bet you guys are interested in others as well. Thanks for watching everyone. If you liked this video, be sure to tap that like button, share it, or leave a comment below. If you have a couple coins to spare, please consider pledging to my Patreon, which directly funds my channel and art projects in exchange for a range of exclusive rewards. Every little bit helps, and anything is greatly appreciated. Until next time, see ya!